Okay, this is going to be the first part in a short series of tutorials on world level creation for the Squad editor. Um, the first part will just be getting the basic terrain in to the editor. Um, what we'll need first obviously is a height map. Any grayscale image will do. This is just a grayscale image I got. It's a 30-meter aster projection of Flinders Island, which is an island in Bass Strait in Australia. It's a bit lumpy because this island is in fact about 35 kilometres long. I'm just going to be producing a 2-kilometre map. I'm using Terrascopter 2, which is a fairly powerful program, but I'm only using it for generating the masks, so I'm going to create a new project. And the handy thing about this is it has UDK sizes automatically, so I'm going to select a 2K size. It's giving me my information that I'm going to get into the SDK automatically, which is good. OK that, OK that. This is my terrain now without a height map applied. I'm going to import my height map. Oops. Apps. Stuff. Flinders Island. Oh, here we go. It's got to be a PNG image. That's my aster projection for my height map. 8-bit grayscale, that's fine. It's a bit lumpy, but that's fine. I'm going to modify that. Oops, cancel. I'm going to modify that. I'm going to bring the altitude down to about 20 or 30. That'll give me a little bit more play with making the weight maps or the masks. So the masks are made, I'm doing it through the weight map here by altitude. So I've got my low altitude at 0. This is going to be my sand mask, so it's my base layer from under the water to the beaches. And already know that I'm going to have this at about 1.5. And then I'm going to save this as a sand. It's going to be a PNG as a sand mask. Yes. Then I'm going to... what is it doing? Okay. I'm going to go to 1.5 with this one, and this is going to be my grass mask, so I want to go from the sand top up to a point where I want to keep my hills and stuff that are running down the middle of this island. I want to keep them for forest, so I'm going to leave my grass. That's pretty good, I like that. I'm going to save that as my grass mask, and then if this is going to play again, it is going to play again. 3.25. This is going to be my forest mask, so I'm going to have all my hills mostly covered in forest, and I'm going to leave that peak down the bottom here. I'm going to leave that bare because I'm just going to have another layer that I want to put in, and it's going to be my peaks. So this one's my forest mask. I'll save that, yes, and then bring up to 19.25, and then above that is going to be my peaks, and save that, and I can close off that bit now. So I've made my masks that I need. I need to now export the terrain, and I'm going to be exporting this as a P16, wherever it is, raw 16-bit R16. This will save as a WinRAR. It'll look like a compressed file. That's fine. And I'm going to call this Flinders Island height map, and save. and leave that as it is because I don't know what it does. Now the next step is to go into the editor and create a new folder. You need to create the new folder inside your content folder and inside a maps folder, and then a folder for that particular map. We go up to modes and go to landscape, and it will have some information in here. I've already done this before, so it's already filled out, but you need to import from file, and then you need to go and select your file and select the RAR file, which is that R16 file, and open that. It'll give you the resolution. Don't worry about the material yet, and it'll give you your 63 quads and 2 bisections, which is what we saw in TerraSculptor, and your overall resolution. I have found, because this is a 35 kilometer map, let's call it 40, and I'm taking it down to 2 kilometers, so that's only 5% of the scaling size. So I've had to scale my Z by down to 5%, otherwise everything gets too tall. I'll show you what I mean. So if I pop this up to, let's say, 20% and import that, you'll see that it's very tall and jaggy, and it would, you know, it's just ridiculous. So I'm going to undo that, and if I bring it down to like 10% and import that, see it's still, oops, it's still a bit jaggy and steepish and not very good for what my purposes are anyway. I'm going to undo that and then undo the new landscape, and then I'm going to take it down to 5% and import that. Now I'll end up with a much more reasonable terrain. The hills aren't ridiculous and enormous, you know, they're a little bit smoothed off. It's all much nicer. Okay, so we've got our height map in. The next thing we need to do is go to our landscape and select our landscape up here, or you can just, well, I can't because I'm in Sculpt. If it was on Manage, yeah, you're better off just selecting it up here. Landscape material is down here in the landscape section. Now, I have a landscape material master that is a copy of one of the vanilla European ones, I think, from memory. This is my master. I don't modify this, I just duplicate this one, and then I rename it to the particular map that I'm doing. In this case, I'm just adding the FI for Flinders Island. I'm going to then drag that and put it in the root of the Flinders Island move, and I've now got my terrain master for this particular map. From that, I'm now going to create a material instance and just leave it as it is, and I'm now going to save the current layer as, and it should go into your new map folder. Just make sure it does though. FI/geo. So this is the geospatial layer, or geo layer. It's everything but gameplay layers, lighting layers. It's everything. It's everything that would normally exist on a landscape or a location that is fixed. I'm tempted to start changing my way of doing maps and actually leaving the geo as purely the landscape and foliage, and then having a separate layer for buildings, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to save. Oh no. Okay, after that little heart attack I had, we're back to it. Okay, so where was I? Okay, so we've got our material instance. Now the material instance, if we go up to the world outliner and select our landscape again, the material instance is what we're going to apply to the landscape. You can't see anything at the moment because there is no masking to allocate the materials to the landscape. So the next thing we need to do is we need to go up to modes and go into landscape mode, and go into the paint mode, and this will show us all of the layers that are associated inside this master. Now because this is my master, I have all of the layers I'm ever going to use on any map in this master. So this master has carried all that over. We're not going to use all of them, we're only going to use 4 of them. So what I've got to do is now double click on my master, and you're seeing there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. This is what we want to look at. The layer blends, that's where all of your material function layers, or your shader layers, are getting blended into the landscape. Down here is your grass node, which is where all of the auto-populating grass types are sorted. And again, you can see it's for every one of them. I need to cull these because I'm only using 4. So in my layer blend, I'm going to go in and we want to keep grass and forest and sand. We don't want soil, so I can delete that. We want rock, but we don't want mud or gravel or dirt rocks or grass light. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 now disconnected nodes can be deleted. And then our grass type node, I'm going to do the same. So I want grass, forest, land. I don't want the soil layer. I want the rock layer. I don't want the mud layer. I don't want the gravel layer. I don't want the dirt rocks layer, and I don't want the grass light layer. Now I have to hook up my rock again because sometimes it will hook them up into the wrong places. The soil one is also not wanted, so we're going to delete that. It doesn't matter if something's not hooked up now, that's not a big deal. We're going to save and apply that now. We still don't have anything on here because we still don't have any masking. So the next thing we need to do after we've applied that material and set it up is we need to create the layer infos. The layer infos contain the physics data for the material, so the basic physics material, and they also are basically the new landscape masks that will be modified and edited by you when you go through and you repaint the layer texture, basically. These later on can be exported. You can export them and keep them as a final. Once you've finalized your terrain, you're happy with it all, export the as a mask. In that case, if you have a huge problem with your map and you have to rebuild it, you can quickly import those modified masks straight in instead of having to repaint everything. So what we need to do is create layer infos. So we create a weight blended layer. It should automatically create this shared assets folder within your map folder, and it should also automatically call it grass because that's the layer name. All this naming convention has to stick. The first one sometimes takes some time. And you can see here it's new folder, and that's our landscape layer info. We need to do that for all of these: weight blended, forest, sand, weight blended, and rock, weight blended. And you'll see also in here now that there's only the 4 layers that I've limited it to in here. We can actually close that. These now we can go in and do the fizz mats for them. So this is forest, there's no forest, so it's going to be dirt. Our grass layer, there's a couple of grasses, but I'm going to grab the grass tall, actually grass tall Russell, because that's got the, that's got the sound attached to it. The rock is just rock. There's a few different rocks, but I'm just using the solid rock. And sand, which is also, there's a few different sands, but mainly sand. Okay, and close that and then save all. The next thing we need to do is, now we've made our landscape layer infos, is we need to come back over here and right click on the layer anywhere in this blank area here. You don't have to select it, but and import from file your mask. So the first one is the grass mask that we made in TerraSculptor. Open that. Yeah, it's a slight difference in the size because I didn't make the masks quite the right size in TerraSculptor. I think it's 1 out or something. It doesn't matter. The difference is vanishingly small. There's nothing showing at the moment because there's no other masks for it to work off to then mask out areas. You'll see that now when I import the forest mask, which is our forested areas on the hills. And now we've got some change in it because we've actually got a second mask for it to do. As a note, whatever this top layer is will cover your entire landscape regardless of what else you put on top. As you add layers or masks, they will paint over the top of things. If there is any bleeding or fall off at the edges, you'll end up with whatever layer is underneath the first one before it, you'll end up that bleeding underneath. So down the track when you come to fix up your map and make it a bit more performant, you can go in and check the layer densities, and you'll have lots of sections of your map that might have, well, we've got 4 here. They could have up to 4 painted layers in a section where there should only be 1 or 2, and that's where you're getting this crossover between the layers. Ideally, you don't want the crossover. Anywho, sand, import the sand mask. So ideally, I should actually be putting the sand mask at the top of the list. The sand or soil, your base material on your ground, is what you really want at the top. That's coming nicely, and then we're going to go down and do the rock one, and that's our peaks. And there we got our peaks. So we've got our peak material, which is just a nice solid rock material. We've got our forest, which is just leaves and stuff, and our grass, which is grass, and our sand, which is sandy sand. Now what we're going to need to do is need to go into our terrain instance. Let's save all first. Better to save all when you want to, rather than have autosave on. Otherwise, it can sometimes save stuff that you don't want saved. So in our instance, we now have only our layers that are pertinent to what we're doing. So we're going to turn on all of these things. We're going to turn on normal intensity and specular tweak for the global, and the rest we're going to turn on. We're not going to worry about macro variation at this point. Macro variation is basically using another mask, which is this Gorodok mask. So if we, hang on, I'll turn that on so I can open it. This is the mask from Gorodok. You can use this as a mask on this terrain to change the shade, or you can shadow the grass or the terrain artificially to give it a bit of change from being just exactly the same looking like this everywhere. So that's something you can play with yourself. It's nothing. The specular tweak, however, is something we're going to have to work on. So I'm going to save this. I'm just going to close that for a minute. We're going to go back to our select menu, and we're going to put in, oh no, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to borrow a lighting level from one of my other maps. I'm going to duplicate this and call it Flinders Island. That's my lighting layer for Flinders Island. I'm going to go into my Flinders Island, and I'm going to lighting layers folder, and I'm going to get that lighting layer I've just duplicated and move it to my new map lighting layer folder. I'm then going to go up to the levels, and we're going to add the lighting level in so that we can actually see stuff better. If we go lit at the moment, it's still black because there is no light in it. So I'm going to go up to levels. I'm going to go add existing level, and then it should take me to the last folder I was in anyway, the lighting layers and this one that I just duplicated. We're going to add that. It's nothing at the moment because it's not set to lit. We go to set to lit, and then suddenly we can see the terrain, and we can also see, you know, how lumpy this terrain is because it's supposed to be 20 times scaled up in reality. Not a big deal. It's all good. So we've got now basic terrain in and basic material applied to that terrain. I'm going to quickly do some things with the landscape to smooth out some stuff. This is completely optional. We want to go into sculpt and smooth, and we're going to, what we're going to do is I'm going to show, I'm not going to do the whole map, but I'm going to show you how to get rid of some of this lumpiness, because believe me, driving over this terrain is interesting. It's far too lumpy for the scale. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my strength to 0.1. With very little pressure on this. I'm going to up the radius a little bit, but more than that. And this is just to give you an idea, and fall off to about half. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to swipe it over and see how it smooths it out. Now that's a fair bit. I'm going to try on this hillside. See, that's what we want. So what I might do is I might undo both of those, and I'm going to go down this, and I'm going to go down to 0.5, 0.05 I should say, and then there we go. So we're still getting a little bit of feature in there, but it's not too bad. So this is where you can up the radius to very big, and maybe we'll bring the fall off back a bit, and then you can literally swipe over the entire terrain and just smooth stuff back down a bit so that it's not so jaggy, it's not so harsh. The hills and that you can do a bit more because in reality they're not going to be that lumpy. The other thing is that, as you can see, I've got quite the drop off on my beach. One way to get rid of that is to put the strength up to 1, put the fall off down to 0, and the radius down to, I don't know, I'm guessing here. That seems like okay. So what I want to do is the right hand edge of this circle touching the grass is going to be my high point, and the left hand edge down in the sand is going to be my low point. So I'm going to be creating a slope by smoothing in between the high point and the low point to create a beachhead or a beach. Now this can be tricky, particularly when you've got little areas like this, but I'm just going to show you how to do it roughly. It's up to you to decide on what radius you want to use, and the radius will give you your steepness and coverage of your beach basically. So what we're doing here is I'm just got my finger down, I'm just dragging it slowly along, just touching the edge of the grass so that I get a nice slopey beach. Now to illustrate this, I'm going to go in and put in, I have a mesh that I use to visualize the water, and it's basically just a 1 meter square that I've colored blue, and it's for creating minimap stuff. I'm going to go out of landscape and into select mode so that I can actually select my map water plane, and I'm going to scale that up by 2000, and I have now a water plane that I can visualize with. I'm going to go into my top view so that I can position it a bit better. Oops. Position it a bit better. We're only talking rough here, so it doesn't really matter. Now, and as far as the elevation of it's concerned, I'm going to we're going to find out where you can see where my beach goes out. See, so that's the 0 point, and then my beach starts there. So I can actually bring this in quite a bit. So you want to have a bit of beach, but you also want to have a bit of depth to your water, and like this Heightmap doesn't allow very much depth of the water, so there's going to be a very shallow sea around here, but besides the point. You can use this to visualize your edges and stuff like that as a temporary thing before you bother putting in building it together with a water layer. So that's a basic way to get your terrain a bit smoothed out, looking a bit nicer, getting your beaches done if they're a bit jaggy on the edges. The only other thing I do is I go in, I'm just going to quickly go along here. The only thing I do is probably blend the, with the paint mode, is to go in and repaint some of this sand. So basically what I've got is I've got a texture that I made. It's just a mask that I've made in GIMP to give me a nice randomized edge, so that I can do some painting that isn't just a circle or a square. I'm going to paint my sand layer because I want to encroach on the grass a bit and get rid of these grass. You need to have a strength up to 1 or 100%, otherwise you're not going to get all the grass covered. Having said that, with this mask, as you can see, this mask, it doesn't cover anywhere near the size of what I'm swiping over, so there's every chance that I'll end up with little bits of grass plopped in here and there which shouldn't be there. So I'm going to go a bit overboard here. Oh, wrong one, sorry. Oh, I'm an idiot. I left it on smooth. Make sure you're on paint, not smooth. Smooth's really good because you can smooth out whatever you paint, but you need to paint first so that you get a nice hard edge, and also it covers up those any of these bits of grass spots and stuff out here are gonna populate with grass when you hook up the grass types. So so this is a good way you can just extend your beach a bit if it's not enough. That'll be fine. So there's a bit of grass, a bit of sand here. I'm just gonna go over and paint that with grass. Everything else looks pretty good. I'm just going to leave it at this. I'm not going to do the whole island. That'd take too much time. So that is, we're done for getting the basic terrain into the editor, getting material on it, and doing some basic editing to the terrain to smooth it out and to fix it up a little bit, ready to go forward.